Hello, welcome to Business Matters. I'm Jamie Robertson. Well, I'm joined by two guests from either side of the world. I've got Melissa Chan, the journalist based in Los Angeles, joining me from there. Melissa, nice to have you on the programme again.
Hello.
Hi. And Sarah Burke, who is in Tokyo, the Economist's former Tokyo bureau. Let's start with the World Health Organization. It has agreed to an independent evaluation of how it has responded to the coronavirus crisis. Addressing the World Health Assembly, the head of the WHO, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, pledged his full support to an inquiry.
I will initiate such an evaluation at the earliest appropriate moment. We welcome any initiative to strengthen global health security and to strengthen WHO and to be better safe. As always, WHO remains fully committed to transparency, accountability, and continuous improvement. We want accountability more than anyone.
That was the head of the WHO, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus. But this comes at a very delicate time for the organisation. It is part, as I'm sure you know, of the United Nations. It was formed 72 years ago, dedicated to the attainment by all peoples of the highest possible level of health. Well, many people are saying it has failed in that objective in the last few months. President Trump called the WHO a puppet of Beijing, saying it failed to hold China to account for its part, he says, in allowing the virus to spread. In a letter released on Monday, Mr. Trump gave the WHO 30 days to make what he called substantive improvements, or else he would reconsider US membership and make his current suspension of funding permanent.
We help fund the World Health Organization. We use it like everyone else does. They gave us a lot of very bad advice, terrible advice. They were wrong so much, always on the side of China. China paid $40 million last year. And we've been paying $450 million a year for many years. Somehow that doesn't work out too well. So I was thinking about bringing our $450 down to $40.
That's President Trump. Well, Beijing, for its part, has reacted angrily. The Chinese Foreign Ministry said the US was trying to shift the blame for its own incompetent response to the virus. At a news briefing, the chief epidemiologist of China's Center for Disease Control and Prevention, he's Wu Junyo, said that it was too early to begin an investigation while the virus was still spreading.
The
current moment is not the appropriate time to have an independent review or investigation. It may have an active impact on the work of the WHO, undermining the health and safety of the global population. This is not the appropriate time to conduct the review, and it should not have an effect on the current ongoing anti-epidemic efforts.
Well, what do we think of the WHO? Melissa, it's an organisation, everything I read says it's an organisation that really needs reform one way or another, but perhaps now is not the time to do it.
Well, the WHO is only as good as its member states. And I think early on, it was in a very tricky situation where they knew that something was going on in China, and they also are perfectly aware that China is an authoritarian state.
Okay.
If you want to get information from this government, I can well understand how officials there were trying to not be too overtly and publicly critical so that they would have their best chances in terms of getting the best information out of China. Of course, if you started criticizing China straight away, you can see how the state would react and perhaps shut down information and not provide information to the WHO. So that's the most charitable explanation for how they were responding, and their social media tweets applauding the Chinese response in the early days. But of course, you can see how some people, and of course, President Trump has really taken to this, has seen this as a mistake, and that the WHO should pay for it. At least that is what President Trump is saying, although, of course, we also have to keep in mind that this is an election year for him, and he needs someone to blame for the almost 100,000 deaths that we've seen in the United States.
Right. Sarah, I mean, what we're seeing here, what Melissa is talking about, of course, in very sort of superficial terms, is just the politicization, and I suppose it's inevitable, but a politicization of an organization that's really meant to be trying to keep the world healthy, isn't it? They should be really above all that.
I mean, it should be, but in recent years anyway, we've seen with rising nationalistic rhetoric and especially with Trump's rule in America, more blaming and sort of denigration of these international organizations. And it does feel that now people are starting to look around and try and shift the blame and externalize blame for how things have gone. We see that in the UK as well, obviously, with comments from a minister yesterday suggesting that they'd got bad scientific advice. I mean, we really do seem to be entering a new era of blame shifting at the moment.
You blame it on nationalisation, particularly, or call it nationalisation, nationalism, the increased nationalism around the world, which means very much that you have to externalise responsibility for some of your own problems, or at least that's what seems to happen.
I mean, partly, yes. I mean, that's been a trend from before this. And I think COVID has only exacerbated that, where countries have really become even more nationalistic and shut their borders and tried to look outside for blame.
But do you think it's also, this applies to other multilateral organisations? I mean, the WTO, for instance, is also getting a lot of criticism as well. I mean, do you think this is something which, in this kind of atmosphere, with this kind of nationalism around, all these multilateral organisations are really seriously threatened?
I mean, look, yes, we've been seeing that for several years now. This is not something new. It's just now is the WHO's turn because it's in the forefront of, it's the most prominent international multilateral body at the moment because of the pandemic. So, I don't think this is something that's unique to this moment or unique to the WHO. It's a trend that we've been seeing.